morning. I'm Amy Gutmann, and I'm president of the University of Pennsylvania and chair of the President's Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues. This is the Commission's third public meeting, and I thank you all for joining us. I extend my deepest thanks to Vice Chair Jim Wagner, president of Emory University, who is hosting us today, and also to each of our commission members for their truly exemplary service. I'd also like to take note of the presence of our designated federal officer, Valerie Bonham, who I'd like to say makes this meeting legal. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie is also the executive director of the Presidential Commission. So let me give you a very quick overview of where we are in our deliberations. Nearly 6 months ago, President Barack Obama asked our commission to recommend how the developing field of synthetic biology and related biotechnologies can maximize public benefits, minimize risks, and operate within appropriate ethical boundaries. In addressing our charge from the President, we've made a conscious effort to be an inclusive and deliberative body. Much stands to be gained from taking an open approach to decision-making. And from the outset, our Commission has encouraged the exchange of perspectives with the goal of making recommendations that will aid President Obama and, above all, serve the public good. At the Commission's first two meetings, we heard from more than 30 invited experts and public representatives who explored essential territory from multiple perspectives: the science, the risks, the benefits, the concerns of public stewardship, and more. Some guests presented information about recent and ongoing achievements in the science of synthetic biology, as well as current and future applications. Others shared their perspectives on possible benefits and anticipated risks. At each meeting, we welcome questions from the public as well as from our commission members, and that's a format that's proved to be highly interactive, and we've had some very valuable sessions, and we plan today to continue, this time presenting you with a provisional set of our recommendations and opening up discussion among the commission members and among those of you who have come to be part of our deliberations. We've tried to build solid ethical and philosophical analysis to our work while remaining firmly rooted in the practical realities that are an integral part of our Commission's charge. So our power is to influence policy through the persuasiveness of our recommendations. We do not have legislative authority, we have advisory authority, and we've attempted to take into account all the facts, contexts, and perspectives presented to us. So what we'll do today is begin the important task of formulating our recommendations. And I'm going to present to you now, and you see them projected here, a draft framework for our report, which consists of 5 principles that we take to be important in the area of synthetic biology and biotechnology more broadly understood. And I'll say something very briefly about each one of these principles, and then through our sessions, we will expand on how these principles have informed our recommendations in synthetic biology. And each one of the commissioners, today and tomorrow, will present one or more recommendations. After I give a very quick overview of the principles, I'm going to turn to President Wagner for giving us a very quick but very essential sense of what we take synthetic biology to be and the context in which these principles are operating. So our framework for evaluating emerging technologies, we think, can have a direct impact on future policy making and public consciousness of bioethical issues more generally. Because synthetic biology represents only the next link in a long chain of scientific innovation. It's a relatively new field. The principles that we're going to discuss are very relevant to synthetic biology, but they're equally relevant to recombinant DNA research, for example. And just as the Belmont report many years ago, decades ago, in fact, created an important framework for the discussion of ethical treatment of clinical research subjects, this commission's work can spur the creation of a common vocabulary to discuss biotechnological advances. And we also think we can help advance national and international conversations about this rapidly changing area of science. So the first principle is one that should be common to everybody who's read the Belmont report or influenced by it, and it is the principle of public beneficence. As we and others have understood the principle, the core of that principle is to maximize public benefits while minimizing public harms, or maximize possible public benefits while minimizing potential possible harms. And we begin with that principle. The second principle is new to presidential commission work and very relevant to synthetic biology and biotechnological advances. And that is the principle of responsible stewardship. And interestingly, several of our presenters gestured towards this principle. One actually recommended to us to have a principle of stewardship. And responsible stewardship is a charge to scientists and public bodies and individuals alike to be trustees of the interests of those who can't represent themselves. We are stewards of the interests of children, of future generations, of the environment, and of present and future interests that are not represented in the democratic process itself. So that's responsible stewardship. Very relevant to the concerns as well as the promise of synthetic biology. Many of our presenters talked about how important it is for our recommendations to attend to the needs of stewarding the environment and biodiversity as we look forward. Third principle, again, none of these principles should strike people as idiosyncratic. This is a principle that has probably not been explicitly articulated in many reports previous by presidential commissions, but it's an incredibly important principle for the work of science, and that is the principle of intellectual freedom and its corresponding intellectual responsibility. And we will have recommendations on that. Fourth principle, which you won't be surprised that I stand behind, but I actually am not the first suggester of this principle to this commission, is that of democratic deliberation. There are many issues that we take up. Indeed, there's almost no issue that we would take up that doesn't have some controversy at its base. Otherwise, if we took these truths to be self-evident, then we wouldn't have to discuss them so much, right? And democratic deliberation tells us basically to have open, inclusive forums with reasonable debate and discussion over issues of difference and commonality, and come to some understanding, when possible a consensus, and when not possible a respect for the differences that continue. And fifth, the principle of justice and fairness. That is also common to the Belmont report, and that principle asks us to be responsible in attending to the distribution of benefits and harms, so that people do not unfairly either gain benefits or are subject to harms disproportionately. So those are our 5 principles. I've just laid them out in whirlwind fashion, but we will come back to them when each commissioner presents the recommendations in draft as we're considering them. I'll just say that we have, as of this minute, We're thinking of 19 recommendations that fall under these 5 principles, and there's more. You will hear about each one of them in the course of these 2 days' proceedings. I will now turn it over to Jim Wagner to say a little bit more about synthetic biology, since I said almost nothing about it. So, Jim, over to you.
And it will be just a little bit more, so bear with me. First of all, Amy, thank you for your leadership of the Commission, and this has been a really remarkable and productive process on this first topic, and I imagine the other topics we will address will go equally well, owing in great measure to your leadership. Welcome to the Commission, to Emory University. Welcome to those in the audience, those in the extended audience, the electronic audience. We're pleased to have you join us as well. While I'm doing welcomes and thanks, Val, thank you and your team for the extraordinary level of work that you're doing to help the Commission display the fruits of its labors. At Emory, in particular, Michael Klaus, Gary Hawk, thank you, folks, for helping us put this particular session together. It is a good thing for the Emory community to see the deliberations of this committee, in part because explicitly declared in the documents that guide us are references to being ethically engaged and to addressing the frontiers of science and technology. And this is certainly exactly what this commission is about. So I'm delighted, for Emory's sake, to welcome you here. To talk a little about synthetic biology, it was interesting in our very first meeting in July, we asked for a definition, and I guess we were rebuffed that they couldn't give us one definition. But I will guide you. Perhaps we can be guided by the incident which brought the topic to the Commission in the first place. The Commission was not created to address synthetic biology. The Commission is broadly established on the study of bioethical issues. But it was in May, most of you in the audience will recall that the Craig Venter Labs, announced what could be described, I think, by everyone as a milestone activity, a feat of genetic engineering, a triumph of genetic engineering in some ways, where the process that he went through is one that permitted the DNA, the entire genome, in fact, from one bacterial species to be, after it was read, to be then discarded. It existed then only in information, in data, and recreated out of laboratory chemicals, synthetically, and then reinserted in the chassis, if you will, of another bacterium, another species, and shown to be able to have converted the second species to the genetic behavior and the process behaviors that the first species had. Okay? So it was a transcription process, but at the end of the day, an entire genome was transferred that had been manufactured on a laboratory bench. Obviously, there was some pretty swift reaction to this. The fact that from data, and that's important to know because it seems to me that one of the Commission's issues about how one manages the intellectual property of synthetic biology is complicated, not made more difficult necessarily, but complicated by the notion that the coin of the realm of synthetic biology may be nothing more than bits and bytes of information. But from data and laboratory chemicals, the prospect of engineering controllable and reliable properties in organisms such that they would behave in ways that they do not behave in nature, got a lot of attention, and it should get a lot of attention. Imagine programmable biological microfactories, if you will, producing fuels and pharmaceuticals and fertilizers and foods, materials and hormones and enzymes. Imagine the prospects even for genetic vaccination based on the activities of being able to controllably and reliably reprogram or add program functions to biology synthetically. And of course, in addition to the excitement, there are a good deal of concerns. What if what is produced is more robust than exists in nature? And are we concerned about that? And what if this new technology could be applied for malevolent purposes? To what degree would we be, in exercising this, could we risk interfering with the natural order of life? some have asked. The process that our chairman, that President Gutmann, outlined is one where over the course of the first two meetings, July and September, we had the opportunity to hear from 34 experts. We'll have a couple more experts in the sessions today and tomorrow to guide us in helping to address the charge that President Obama gave us to ensure the maximum benefits for society while doing the best we can to obviate the risks, to try to articulate what is marvelous about this, about the technology of synthetic biology and how best to pursue it. What are the threats that we can know or can imagine, and how should we avoid them? And to acknowledge that there certainly are many opportunities we can't even imagine now, and similarly there may be certain risks that we can't imagine now that are unknowable, but how is it that we would advise society to be best prepared when we ultimately encounter those kind of risks? We'll discuss today a set of recommendations that are intended to provide our best guidance, and we'll be open to the thoughts of those who are with us today and to others who can log in later and email us. Thoughts that we hope, we expect and have been told will address public policy. We have some thoughts, in fact, about private action. To take all of this, to take best advantage of the promise and to take responsible precautions to preclude suffering the negative consequences of accidents or malicious intent. It's a wonderful challenge, and I am in awe of the group that's been assembled to do this and have been learning wonderfully. At some point, I'll give back a little. But in the meantime, we need to hear from our people, so I'll turn the microphone back to our chairman.
Thanks, Jim. I feel blessed by having a wonderful vice chair and great commission, and now everybody will have a chance, as we all will, to deliberate about our recommendations as they are in our minds at present, and will no doubt have some revisions as we take advantage of these two days. Let me say first that one of our commission members can't be here in person, but is here over the speakerphone. And Raju, can you? I'm going to go around and have all of our commissioners introduce themselves. So Raju, let me begin with you.
Amy, thank you. I apologize for not being to. I'm Raju Kuchalapati. I'm a professor of genetics and medicine at Harvard Medical School.
Great. Nita?
You'll need to turn on your microphones for the folks online.
Yeah. There you go.
I repeat. I'm Nita Farahani. I'm an associate professor of law and philosophy at Vanderbilt University.
And then you probably should turn it, yeah.
Good morning. I'm John Aris. I teach philosophy and bioethics at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville.
Hi, I'm Anita Allen. Happy to be here in my hometown of Atlanta, and I'm a professor of law and philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania.
Dan Solmacy from the University of Chicago, Department of Medicine, McLean Center for Bioethics, and the Divinity School.
Good morning, Steve Hauser, Department of Neurology, University of California, San Francisco. I'm a neurologist and a neuroscientist.
I'm Barbara Atkinson. I'm the Executive Vice Chancellor and the Executive Dean at the School of Medicine at University of Kansas in Kansas City, Kansas.
Hi, I'm Lonnie Ali. I'm an MBA from UCLA, and I'm married to Muhammad Ali.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Alex Garza. I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Health Affairs and the Chief Medical Officer for the Department of Homeland Security.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine Grady from the Department of Bioethics at the Clinical Center at the National Institutes of Health.
I'm Nelson Michael from the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research.
Thank you all. And let me reintroduce Valerie Bonham, who is